Welcome to October, everybody. It is officially spooky season, and to celebrate, every video I upload in October is going to be about a horror game. And I thought, what better way to start things off than with the full release of the newest installment in one of the biggest horror franchises of the last decade, the Outlast trials. They decided to go the co-op route with this one, which I think is definitely interesting. Does it work? Is it scary? Let's find out. So, in terms of a story, the Outlast Trials is very bare compared to previous entries in the series. It's set during the Cold War, where you and every other player take on the role of a test subject, forced to complete sadistic trials as a form of brainwashing by the big bad corporation. That's kind of it story-wise. Instead of traditional horror game structure, the game is split into trials, where you're put into a specific place, tasked with completing a specific objective, whilst different murderous stalker-type enemies try and murder you into oblivion. The trials are structured as separate missions, each designed to push the subjects, you, to the limits. These trials are essentially the game's levels, and they vary in objectives, environments, and the types of enemies that you will encounter. These settings can range from asylum-like facilities to more open yet still terrifying spaces, such as an abandoned funhouse. You can choose from different difficulty levels, with higher difficulties increasing the intensity and danger of the trials, but also giving you better rewards for doing so. With the game being designed for a multiplayer experience, up to 4 players can work together to complete the trials. The cooperative nature encourages teamwork, though you will often be separated and must survive on your own at times. Each trial has specific objectives that you must complete to advance. These objectives can range from silencing a snitch to pushing a group of mannequins to their fiery doom. Between trials, you return to a central hub area, akin to a prison cafeteria, where you can interact with other players, customize your character, and more importantly, play chess with other players. And if chess doesn't do it for you, you can also arm wrestle other players. I am reluctantly going to admit that I spent far too much time in this game doing these mini-games. This area though serves as a safe zone where you can customise your loadout and choose which trials you want to complete next. Now, the main game, at the time of recording at least, only consists of 5 main trials. These 5 main trials take around 45 minutes each to complete, but this isn't how you finish the game. Completing any trial gives you these blue tickets, and at the time of recording, earning 20 blue tickets allows you to escape the facility. But it ain't that easy. You must then escape the facility in a solo trial, but even then, you're not done. You actually have to do this 3 times in order to unlock all of the endings. But the game isn't just these 5 main stages, that would be boring. The game also has rotating weekly trials that are much shorter, ranging between 10 and 20 minutes usually. These also come with weekly modifiers, such as starting the trial with minimal health or having fewer inventory slots. There are even some where you have one particular additional enemy spawning with you, regardless of which trial you select. These add more variety to the game, considering the lack of main trials, but we'll circle back around to this when we get into the progression. So, that's how the structure of the game works. But what about the actual game itself? You know, the spooky stuff. The transition to multiplayer has a significant impact on the core gameplay. The Outlast Trials fundamentally changes the way that this game is played. Unlike the previous entries where you're alone with nothing but your crippling fear, the game now allows for up to 4 people to work together to survive the trials. This shift obviously transforms the gameplay from a solitary experience to one that requires cooperation. You can customise your loadouts with various items and abilities that suit your playstyle. You have a rig, which is an ability on a cooldown. I mostly used either the health booster or more prominently the stun rig. The stun rig is a get out of jail free card. You find yourself trapped, spotted with nowhere to go, use your stun rig to disorient the enemy, and get the hell out of there. You can upgrade these as you level up to gain additional minor abilities. For example, my stun rig now also refills my camera battery and stamina whenever I use it. There's also the equivalent of perks to select. For example, the first one you unlock is Slippers, where walking on glass doesn't make a sound. The loadout choices are crucial as they directly affect how you handle the trials and assist your team. Like all survival horror games, the Outlast Trials emphasises resource management, where you must scavenge for supplies and decide how to use them efficiently. In a multiplayer setting, this often involves communication and coordination, as resources are limited and they must be shared amongst the team. The sort of items you can pick up are things like medicine, batteries for your camera, obviously, it's Outlast, and bottles and bricks that can be used as weapons. There's stuff like adrenaline that turns you into Sonic, and an antidote which calms you down when you go crazy. That's right, you can also lose your mind in this game. Alongside your health bar, you also have this green bar as well. Certain events in the game, if you're not careful, can force this green bar to whittle down, in which case you will go cuckoo, and a slender man looking fella will start following you around the map. To get rid of him, you either use an antidote, or you run away from Slender Man for long enough. It feels like around 30 seconds. The actual objectives themselves is of course important. Whilst the core of Outlast has always involved running and hiding, there's of course puzzles and objectives that require multiple players to finish. This could mean one player distracting an enemy whilst others complete a task, or several players working together to open some sort of pathway. These objectives can be a little confusing at first. On a blind playthrough, you don't really know where to go. There's no waypoint telling you where to go unless that's something you can enable in the settings, so your initial playthrough consists of just wandering through rooms, evading enemies until you find your objective. Some of these are more fun than others, but they do vary quite a bit from trial to trial. The core moment-to-moment gameplay remains the same, but the things that you're striving for, they change quite dramatically. Now, if you're here, watching this video, I am going to take a guess and say that you enjoy horror games, and now I am aware that this is an out there suggestion. But I want to ask you one thing. What is the number one thing that all horror games should strive for as a priority? Take your time. I'm joking, don't take your time, because I'm about to tell you the answer. They need to be scary. And whilst the Outlast Trials maintains the series' characteristic tension and grotesque atmosphere, the multiplayer aspect inevitably changes the nature of the horror experience. It's very difficult to feel fear when in a group. In previous Outlast games, the fear was largely derivative due to your sense of isolation and vulnerability. Being alone in the dark with limited resources and no means to fight back amplified the fear. In contrast, having other players around in the Outlast Trials inherently reduces this sense of isolation. The presence of companions can make the game feel less daunting, as you always have somebody to rely on for support. The game does have creepy moments, but they're mostly in the exit level when you're by yourself. Nothing about the game changes. This level is just like any other trial. You're just by yourself this time. But when that experience is shared with others, the terror can become diluted. The fear becomes more about the group's survival rather than an individual's fight against insurmountable odds. While this can still create tense moments, it's a different kind of tension, one that is less about primal fear and more about the stress of no man left behind, which is generally more of an action trope. On the flip side, multiplayer does introduce new forms of horror through emergent gameplay. Miscommunication, panic, and mistakes made by teammates can lead to unexpected scares and intense situations. However, these moments are often more chaotic than terrifying, and the reliance on others can sometimes lead to humorous outcomes that detract from the horror. The multiplayer nature of the Outlast Trials ultimately shifts the game from terrifying to funny, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I enjoyed every single minute of my 30 hours with the game so far. It's just not got the fear factor that this series is known for. The atmosphere in this game remains oppressive and grotesque, consistent with the series' tone. However, the need to focus on objectives, strategize with teammates, and manage resources can somewhat shift the player's attention away from the environment. The mechanical nature of completing tasks over and over again with others can make the horror feel like more of a backdrop rather than the central focus. Most of these areas are very well designed visually speaking, they're dripping in atmosphere, but when all you can think about is where you're going to find the next fourth key in a row, you kind of forget to appreciate it. The Outlast Trials does successfully integrate multiplayer into the Outlast formula. However, this comes at the cost of some of the series' signature fear. The sense of isolation, which was a cornerstone of the original games, is inherently diminished this time around.
Hi everyone, this is me. Look how cool I am.
Just wanted to take a 20-second break from the video to say that if you're enjoying the content, then to please check out some of the other videos on the channel if they look interesting to you. You'll be doing yourself a favour if you really think about it. I even have a playlist with some of my best videos, so they're easy viewing. Thanks guys, back to the video. Now, for the biggest issue that this game has, the progression. This game is going to suffer from the same damn thing so many other multiplayer games are suffering from. Progression is too slow. I am genuinely quite sick of talking about this. Halo Infinite, the Finals, X-Defiant are all first-person shooters, yes, but they're also 3 games with fantastic core gameplay that are heavily hampered by their slow-as-hell progression. Far too many developers or publishers, whoever's in charge of the decision, these days expect you to play their game and their game only. I mentioned earlier how you have a loadout with a rig and 3 perks. Sounds great, right? Well, I am about to show you the loadout I had on the verge of my second escape 20 hours into the game. Look at that. Look at it. I have 1 perk. Now, I could equip 2 other perks, but they suck and I don't want to waste my tokens on them. But the others that could possibly be cool unlock too slowly. What do you mean I can beat the game twice and have unlocked a grand total of 3 perks? I get the concept. They want you to come back to the game every week to complete your weekly challenges and play the rotating trials. But there isn't enough content to expect people to do this for months on end. Most people will unlock the cool perks just as they begin to grow tired of the game. This progression is far too slow, it's inexcusable, and only the ultimate hardcore fan base that this game will garner will end up appreciating it. And for what it's worth, I don't see this game dying anytime soon. There is no other game out there like the Outlast Trials, at least not doing it this well. There will always be people playing this game, as long as it's supported obviously, and that's great. It's a game that focuses on community, and I love it when games like these succeed. It's increasingly rare in the modern gaming landscape. But there just isn't enough content in the game. 5 main trials is absolutely not enough. For a regular horror game, yeah, 5 to 6 hours is a decent runtime. For a live service game, I think there needs to be at least 10 hours worth of main trial content in my opinion. The weekly trials are so short, it's one objective and then you leave, and they do become repetitive. It just seems so counterintuitive to have the unlocks happen at a point where you're probably beginning to become a bit bored. I feel they definitely could have implemented this a lot better. Due to the lack of content, being able to experiment with different loadouts would add so much needed variety, but they chose not to do this. But progression aside, I think this game is great. As I'm recording the video now, I kind of feel like I've been complaining a lot, but I did genuinely really enjoy the game. It works very well. Multiplayer horror isn't something that works too often, and whilst the fear factor is definitely diluted here, it's still a very enjoyable game with friends, and it seems as though they are committed to adding new content and events, which are definitely needed. So I can't see it disappearing anytime soon, and that's why the Outlast Trials is actually good. For now, that is all from me. If you want to see the rest of the horror games I've been making videos on this month, then you better subscribe, because then you will see them when you log into YouTube. They will be coming every Monday for the month. That's four whole videos. If you enjoyed this one, leave it a like, and I will see you next week. Have a nice day, and goodbye.